She thought marrying a rich man meant her struggles were over. But that mansion held storms no one warned her about. Her name was Naomi Sinclair, born Naomi Harris. Dark skin like polished obsidian, quiet eyes that had seen too much too young. She grew up in Atlanta, raised by a mama who worked 2 jobs and still found time to press her daughter's hair and pray over her feet before prom. Naomi never asked for much, only one thing she dared to dream of: peace. Not diamonds, not silk, just peace. So when Daniel Sinclair walked into her life, kind, soft-spoken, rich as old wine, Naomi thought she'd finally been chosen by fate. Not for pain this time, but for something better. He proposed in the garden of his family's Hampton estate. Roses, ring, promises, and for a minute, Lord, she believed. But the real story didn't start with the ring. It started the night she walked into that mansion, her hand in his, and her name still fresh on the lips of the staff. Mrs. Sinclair, except not everybody said it with a smile. Daniel's mother, Eleanor Sinclair, opened the door herself. High cheekbones, icy pearls, a smile that sliced, and when Eleanor saw Naomi, her face twitched just for a second, like something sour passed under her nose. "You're lovely," she said, but her eyes said, "Not enough." Dinner was candlelit, elegant, silverware that weighed more than Naomi's rent check back in Bankhead. And silence, thick, expensive silence. Daniel spoke about work, stocks, mergers. Naomi tried to offer warmth. She complimented the roast. Eleanor sipped her wine slow and said, "Tell me, Naomi, what was it like, growing up without privilege?" Naomi blinked. "Well, Oh, don't be shy. I'm sure Daniel found that very humbling." The room chilled. Naomi clenched her napkin. Then Eleanor leaned forward, voice sugar-sweet, eyes like cut glass. "You must be quite the story, Naomi. A girl from there, ending up here. Some might even call it a Cinderella tale. Or," she sipped her wine, "maybe just a gold digger's dream." The words landed like a slap. Daniel coughed awkwardly, eyes to his plate. Naomi didn't move, didn't flinch. She set her fork down slow. Her voice was steady, like a church bell ringing through fog. "Actually, Mrs. Sinclair, gold was never my desire. Just peace. But I see even in this big house, peace ain't always included." Eleanor's smile faltered. Just a flicker. And Naomi? She looked her straight in the eye, regal as a queen on a battlefield. Because when your mama raised you on prayers and purpose, you don't bow to no pearls, not even one sitting on a diamond-studded neck. But this was just the first supper, the first crack in a porcelain mask. 'Cause behind that elegant smile, Eleanor had plans, and Naomi was about to learn. In some mansions, the knives don't stay in the kitchen. They say some smiles shine like gold, but hide venom bitter than bile. Naomi woke the next morning in a silk robe, sunlight pouring through lace curtains, but the warmth on her skin didn't match the chill in her bones. Daniel was already gone for a meeting. Only a note left. "Lunch with Mother. She's trying." Trying what? Downstairs, the house was too quiet. Like a museum. Like it didn't want her footsteps in it. She followed the scent of chamomile to the sunroom, and there she was. Eleanor, in cream linen, flipping pages of some garden magazine like she didn't have a care in the world. "Naomi," she smiled, not looking up. "Do sit. I had Cook make your favorite. Grits, yes?" Naomi sat, careful. The china was bone white, the silver polished like mirrors. "I appreciate the gesture," she said, "but I prefer mine with salt, not sugar." Eleanor chuckled, the kind of laugh you hear from women who smile while setting traps. "Well, that's what this household will need, I suppose. Salt, grit." She looked up, eyes scanning Naomi like a museum exhibit. "You know, I was married at 19. My husband's family doubted me too. Thought I wasn't refined enough." Naomi's brow lifted. "You? Yes, because I was only new money." She sipped her tea. "But I proved myself. I learned the rules. I played the part. Eventually they saw me as one of them. And what part would you suggest I play, Mrs. Sinclair?" Eleanor smiled wider. "Just know your place, darling. You're Daniel's wife now. That's all. Not family." Naomi's chest tightened. "I thought marriage made me both." Eleanor leaned forward, placing her hand gently, too gently, over Naomi's. "Oh, sweet girl, marriage makes you visible. Not equal." There it was, the core. No more masks, just venom, dressed in lace. Naomi stood, and in a voice low as thunderclouds before a storm, she said, "I've been black, dark-skinned, and underestimated my whole life. I didn't marry up, Mrs. Sinclair. I married across, and the only thing beneath me is this petty game." She walked out without finishing her tea. "But Eleanor," she didn't flinch. She just watched Naomi leave and whispered to herself, "She'll break. They all do." But what Eleanor didn't know was that Naomi had been broken before, and each time she'd put herself back together, stronger still. Naomi hadn't seen the papers hidden in the study drawer, hadn't heard the late-night calls between Daniel and his mother, hadn't yet learned the truth about her inheritance. Some truths don't shout. They wait, in drawers, in dust, in ink that was never meant for your eyes. That afternoon, Naomi wandered through the east wing of the mansion, a part of the house no one had bothered to show her. Her heels tapped soft on the marble, her heart louder. The study door was ajar, mahogany, heavy, smelling like leather, old secrets, and forgotten names. She stepped inside. Books lined the walls, gold frames, old men in oil paint, a fireplace that hadn't been lit since last winter probably. But what caught her eye was the desk, big, polished, powerful, and on top of it, papers, fanned slightly open like a hand halfway through a game of poker. Naomi's fingers hovered. She shouldn't, but the house had already told her she didn't belong, so she opened the drawer, and there it was, the Sinclair Family Trust. Last amendment, 3 weeks before the wedding. She scanned the lines. Her heart slowed, then raced. Daniel's name, written bold and blessed. Eleanor, executor, properties, bonds, art. But no mention of Naomi, not even as wife, not even a clause. And then a handwritten note slipped between the pages, in Eleanor's cursive. "Protect the estate from manipulation. Daniel is too soft-hearted. She may try to claim legacy through marriage. Block any such attempt." Naomi sat back like she'd been struck. Her name wasn't in the will, but her presence haunted every line of it. She closed the drawer with a shaking hand, and that's when she heard it, the click of heels behind her. Eleanor stood in the doorway, arms folded, eyes cold. "Curiosity," she said softly, "is such a low-class trait." Naomi turned, spine straight. "I wasn't looking for trouble," she said, "but I found it anyway." Eleanor stepped in, slowly, like a cat with time to kill. "I had a prenup prepared. Daniel refused, said it was unromantic. But trust Naomi, romance fades, paper stays." Naomi felt heat rise in her cheeks, not from shame, but from rage. "You planned to erase me before I even arrived." Eleanor didn't blink. "I planned to protect my bloodline. We've spent generations building this family's name. You spent your life surviving. And maybe that's why I'm stronger than all of you," Naomi said, voice trembling but proud. "Because survival teaches what privilege forgets, how to fight with nothing but truth." Eleanor's laugh was brittle. "Oh, darling, truth doesn't win wars. Power does." But Naomi wasn't done. She stepped forward, eyes burning. "I may not have your money, your pearls, or your crooked papers, but I have something none of you do. A soul that ain't for sale." She left that room like a storm walking on 2 feet. But what Naomi didn't see was the other paper, hidden in the envelope under the drawer's false bottom. A second will, a newer one, signed, but not yet notarized, with a single stunning change, half the estate to Naomi Harris Sinclair. And Eleanor, she already knew about it, and she had no intention of letting it stand, not while she still breathed. "Want to know what Eleanor did that night to make the will disappear?" That night, the Sinclair mansion glowed like a crown, chandeliers blazing, violins playing somewhere deep in the West Wing. Eleanor hosted a small gathering for the board of Daniel's investment firm, which, in Sinclair language, meant 12 white men in tuxedos and 2 black waiters who were never to speak, unless spoken to. Naomi stood at the top of the stairs, wrapped in satin the color of blood. Her dark skin shimmered under the lights, and yet, in that house full of whispers, Her presence was treated like a flaw in the painting. Daniel greeted guests like he wasn't married. And Eleanor, she played hostess with such grace, you'd almost forget her heart was a vault full of ice. But Naomi, she remembered. She walked into that ballroom like a woman who knew she didn't belong and decided to stand anyway. Eleanor saw her and smiled. "Naomi, darling, could you help the staff refresh the rosé? You know how to manage things, don't you?" The room didn't hear it, but Naomi did. She didn't flinch. "Of course," she said, lifting her chin. "But I was hoping to read something tonight. A letter I found. It seems there's been some confusion about my place in this family." Eleanor's eyes flickered, just for a second. "Daniel doesn't like scenes, dear." Naomi stepped closer, voice quiet, but sharp. "I'm not here to perform. I'm here to be seen, whether y'all like it or not." But before the storm could break, a loud pop rang through the hall. Then, darkness. The chandelier flickered, then died. Gasps, footsteps, shuffling, and in the chaos, Eleanor disappeared. By the time light returned, Naomi was alone in the hallway. The study door stood open. She ran. The drawer was ajar. The envelope, gone. All that remained was a faint scent of burning paper. Naomi dropped to her knees, pulled open every compartment, every shelf, every crevice. Ash. Just ash. But here's the thing, baby. It didn't smell like smoke. And that's when Naomi saw it, tucked beneath the corner of the rug. A matchbook. From the Rosemont Hotel, Daniel's usual lunch spot. She picked it up like a blade, and in that moment, Naomi realized it wasn't just Eleanor hiding things. It was Daniel, too. And betrayal don't always come with a slap. Sometimes it comes wearing a ring. The Rosemont Hotel sat in the heart of Manhattan. Quiet, discreet, expensive. A place for secret meetings and whispered deals. Naomi walked in like she belonged. Because she did. No more shrinking, no more asking for space. She moved like her mother taught her. Back straight, head high, pain hidden in the curve of her lipstick. She went straight to the front desk. "I'm here to meet my husband," she said. The concierge smiled politely. "And your husband's name, ma'am?" "Daniel Sinclair." The name hit like thunder behind velvet. The man behind the desk blinked. "One moment." He turned, whispered something to the manager. Naomi watched, noted the tension. The pause too long to be innocent. The manager came forward. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Sinclair. Mr. Sinclair isn't on our list today." Naomi smiled slow. "I never said today." The manager's eyes flickered, and Naomi leaned in. "I'm not asking to see him. I'm asking which room he always books for his private lunches." The manager froze. She dropped her voice. "Let me explain something. I'm his wife, and if you don't tell me, I'll stand in this lobby until the last guest checks out, asking each one if they know the name. Eleanor Sinclair." Silence. Then, "Room 317, he said. "Always room 317. Naomi walked the hallway like a woman walking through smoke, each step heavier than the last. She paused at the door. It was locked. She closed her eyes and pulled out the envelope. Inside wasn't the will, but something more dangerous. Receipts, photos, screenshots. Daniel, Eleanor, and a lawyer. Meeting, talking, signing, 3 days before the wedding. She slid the photos under the door and whispered through the crack. "I don't need to break the door down, Daniel. I just need you to open it." Silence. Then, a slow click. The door opened, and there he was. Daniel, still in his suit. Tie loosened, guilt plain on his face. "Naomi." She didn't let him finish. "Why?" He swallowed. "She threatened to cut me out, Naomi. Everything. The trust. The company. Said if I married you, I'd lose it all." Naomi stared. "So you gave her what she wanted? A marriage, with boundaries, with backdoors." Daniel stepped closer. "I was trying to protect us." "No, Daniel. You were trying to protect your comfort. I already had nothing. But you let your mother strip me of the one thing I did have. Respect." Daniel's voice broke. "She made me choose." Naomi stepped back, tears burning but unshed. "And you chose silence." She turned, and as she walked away, she didn't cry, because something inside her had shifted. This wasn't a love story anymore. This was war. And Naomi, she was done playing nice. Naomi didn't go home. She didn't text, didn't call. She booked a room at a hotel in Harlem. Smaller, older, real, no chandeliers. Just peeling wallpaper and peace for the first time in weeks. She slept. Not well, but honest. The next morning she dressed in black and took the train to Brooklyn. Not for escape, but for strategy. She knocked on the door of a brownstone that smelled like memories, and when it opened, there stood Aunt Vi, old school, no nonsense, church hats and hard truths. Naomi fell into her arms. Vi held her like she was still 7 years old, crying from a scraped knee. "They think I married for money, Auntie," Naomi whispered. "But I married for love, and they using that love to bury me." Vi stepped back, wiped Naomi's face with the hem of her apron. "Let 'em try. We Harris women don't bury easy." They sat in the kitchen, hands wrapped around chipped mugs. Naomi laid it all bare. The will, the lie, the erased name, the burned envelope. Vi listened, then stood and opened the top cabinet, pulled out a box. Inside, a flash drive. "Your mama gave me this before she passed. Said if they ever came for you, this might help." Naomi blinked. "What is it?" Vi smiled, slow. "Proof of who you are, and what they owe you." Naomi took it in shaking hands, clicked it open. Her mother, on video, sitting at a kitchen table, dark-skinned, proud, speaking straight to camera. "If you watching this, baby, they trying to erase you. But let me tell you who you are. You are Naomi Delilah Harris, daughter of strength, granddaughter of survivors. And this land, this inheritance, your father didn't leave it in paper. He left it in blood. His family never claimed him, 'cause he married me, a dark-skinned woman from the South. But you got every right to that name, to everything they trying to keep from you. Don't let 'em shame you. Don't let 'em cut you out. You belong." Naomi broke, right there on that kitchen floor. Not from pain, but from power. All this time she thought she'd married into legacy, but legacy had always lived inside her. Now she had the will, the video, the truth, and the storm was coming. But first, there was one last dinner to attend. The invitation came in a crisp white envelope, hand-delivered by the driver. Dinner at the Sinclair estate, 7 p.m. sharp, family only. Naomi didn't flinch. She put on a black dress that hugged her spirit like armor. No lace, no pearls, just her dark skin glowing like oil beneath moonlight. When she walked into that mansion, she didn't knock. Eleanor was waiting in the foyer, a flute of champagne already in hand, smiling that soft, venom-laced smile. "Naomi," she purred, "how nice of you to join us. After your little vacation?" Naomi walked right past her, straight to the dining room. Daniel sat at the head of the table, tie loose, guilt heavy in his posture. The lawyer was there too, Mr. Whitmore, sipping water like it was wine. Eleanor followed, unbothered. "I thought we'd settle things privately," she said. "No need to air our family matters in public." Naomi sat. She didn't smile, didn't blink. "There's nothing private about betrayal," she said. "Just silence that's been paid for." Eleanor raised an eyebrow. Mr. Whitmore cleared his throat. "We've reviewed the documents. As it stands, Naomi has no legal claim to the Sinclair estate. The signed trust was never amended formally." Naomi cut him off. "And yet, there was a second version." Eleanor's eyes flashed. "Which was never filed." Naomi reached into her bag, pulled out the flash drive, laid it on the table like a blade. "What about this?" Eleanor stiffened. Daniel sat forward. "What is that?" Naomi clicked it. And from the tiny speakers, her mother's voice filled the room. "You are Naomi Delilah Harris, daughter of strength. They may try to erase you, baby, but you come from fire that don't go out." The room went still. Eleanor's lips tightened. Mr. Whitmore paled. Daniel looked at his wife, really looked at her, as if seeing the storm for the first time. Naomi's voice was low but unshakable. "My father was your half-brother, Eleanor. The one you cut off when he married my mother. The one whose inheritance you buried. But you forgot one thing." She leaned in. "I kept receipts." She slid the envelope across the table. The photos, the signatures, the matchbook from room 317. Daniel's face turned crimson. "You followed me?" Naomi laughed once. Not soft. "I trusted you. That was my first mistake." Eleanor's voice rose, brittle. "You think a video and some old photos can undo legacy?" "No," Naomi said, "but they can." She stood. and the double doors behind her opened. 2 women entered, dark-skinned, poised. One, a journalist. The other, a paralegal from the Harris family firm. They placed documents on the table. One read, "Motion to reopen the Sinclair Estates Inheritance Review." Another, "Petition for fraudulent will suppression." Naomi's voice cut through the air like silk on steel. "I'm not here to steal anything. I'm here to reclaim what was already mine." The silence that followed was louder than a scream. Eleanor reached for her glass. Her hand shook. Daniel spoke, but not to Naomi. "Mother, did you know?" Eleanor's mask cracked. For the first time, she looked old, tired. "I did what I had to do," she said, "to protect this family." Naomi tilted her head. "No, Mrs. Sinclair, you did what you had to do, to erase mine." She turned toward the door, but before she could step out, Eleanor's voice sliced through the air once more. "You won't win." Naomi paused, then looked back over her shoulder. "I already did." But just as she reached the hallway, a voice called her name. Not Daniel, the butler, Mr. Price. He held an envelope in his hand, yellowed, sealed. "This came the day after the wedding, addressed to you. She told me to burn it, but I couldn't." Naomi took it. The handwriting was familiar. Her father's. She opened it, hands trembling. Inside, one line. "If they deny you the table, baby, build your own and make it bigger." But the bottom corner held something else. A key, small, old. No note, just a number etched into the back. 1914. Naomi's eyes widened. She knew that number. She'd seen it before. Engraved above a door she was told never to open. The hallway felt longer that night. Colder. Naomi walked alone, the brass key tight in her palm like a prayer. She could hear the whispers of the past in the wallpaper, feel the weight of generations pressing down on her shoulders. She paused at the door. There it was, hidden near the east wing behind a velvet curtain. Room 1914. She'd asked once, early in her marriage, what was behind it. Eleanor had smiled and said, "Oh, just an old storage space. Nothing of interest." But now Naomi knew better, because nothing gets locked away unless it holds something worth hiding. She slid the key into the lock. It turned smooth, too smooth for something untouched. The door creaked open. Darkness, dust, the scent of cedar, old papers, forgotten time. Naomi stepped inside, her heels silent on the thick carpet. She found a light switch, pulled it. A single chandelier flickered on. And there, beneath the golden glow, was her father, not in flesh, but in paint. A portrait, massive, framed in gold, his dark skin rich and luminous, eyes soft like hers, the same jawline, the same nose. He wore a suit, not new but pressed, proud. Beside him stood a woman, her mother, and in her arms, Naomi, maybe 6 months old. The painting was signed in the corner, "Commissioned by Jonathan Sinclair, 1994. Naomi gasped. Her knees buckled, but she didn't fall. She stepped closer. Around the room were more portraits, photos, letters, newspaper clippings, all hidden, all hers. A file sat on a table, thick. She opened it. Inside, birth certificate. Jonathan Harris Sinclair listed as father. Land deeds from Alabama, transferred to Naomi D. Harris, in trust. A letter from Jonathan to Eleanor. "You don't have to love her, but you'll respect her. She's my legacy, whether you like it or not." It hit her like a hymn. They never erased her because she didn't belong. They erased her because she did, because she was the truth that stained their lie. Naomi stood still for a long time, letting the past wrap itself around her like a shawl. She whispered, "I see you, Daddy," then folded the documents and tucked them into her purse. She turned to leave, but the doorknob rattled behind her. She wasn't alone. The door opened slow. Eleanor stood in the frame, face pale, lips pressed thin. She took in the room, the portraits, the files, the truth, and for once she didn't speak, just stared. Naomi looked her dead in the eye. "You locked away a father, a legacy, and a truth you couldn't wash off." Eleanor stepped in, slow. This room was never meant to be opened. Naomi nodded. "I know. That's why I'm keeping it open." She moved past her, but Eleanor's voice stopped her. "You think you've won?" Naomi turned. "No, I think I've survived, and that's something you've never had to do." Then she walked down that hall like it was her own runway. But just as she reached the stairs, she heard it. A door slam, a shout, then Daniel's voice, and a word that changed everything. "What do you mean she's pregnant?" Naomi froze. Pregnant? But she hadn't told him. Not yet. So who the hell was he talking to? Naomi didn't breathe, didn't move, just stood in the stairwell, the walls of the mansion pressing in around her like a vice. She followed the voices, soft steps, no noise. Daniel was in the drawing room, phone in hand, back turned. "No," he said. "You said it wasn't mine. You promised." Silence on the other end. Then his voice cracked. "Do not come here. My wife. Naomi can't know. Not like this." Naomi backed up, heart pounding like thunder in her chest. She felt like a stranger in her own skin. She turned to leave, but the front door opened. And in walked Sierra. Light-skinned, tall, polished. One of Daniel's colleagues. Always laughed too loud at his jokes. Always texted at midnight. Naomi had asked once. Daniel brushed it off. "She's harmless. But nothing's harmless when it hides in shadow." Naomi stepped into the room. Sierra froze. Daniel's face drained of color. Naomi's voice came out cold as the marble floor beneath her. "Congratulations! Seems the Sinclair bloodline got real busy this month." Sierra opened her mouth, but Naomi raised a hand. "Don't. I'm not here for excuses." Daniel tried. "Naomi, please, were you going to tell me? Or just let her show up at our child's christening too?" Daniel stepped forward. "I made a mistake." "No," Naomi said. "A mistake is forgetting milk. This is a choice." Sierra looked down, then whispered, "I didn't know he was still with you." Naomi stared at her, then turned to Daniel. "You erased me on paper, then tried to erase me in person." She pulled the documents from her bag, dropped them on the floor. "My father's portrait is hanging upstairs. My blood runs through this house. But you'll be written in footnotes." She stepped toward the door. Daniel whispered, "Where are you going?" Naomi turned once more. "To finish what my father started." And then she pulled the second envelope from her purse, the one she hadn't opened yet, sealed in wax. No return name, just her initials. Inside, she found one sentence. "You'll find what you need beneath the floorboards of the greenhouse." And tucked inside, a deed to the Sinclair Southern Estate, signed Jonathan H. Sinclair, witnessed, notarized, before his death. And Naomi's name was on it. Georgia heat hits different when you're carrying ghosts. Naomi stepped off the plane into air thick with memory, that sticky kind that clings to your skin and whispers, "You remember me, don't you?" She rented a truck, no driver, no fanfare, just her and a folder full of truth, riding down a red clay road toward a past she'd never been allowed to claim. The sign was old, chipped white paint, hanging sideways on rusted hinges, Sinclair Grove. The estate sat on 60 acres of land, peach trees, cypress, and behind it all, a greenhouse, nearly swallowed by thyme and ivy. This was where her father grew up, where he'd learned to ride, to dream, to write letters to the dark-skinned girl he loved, even though his mother told him it would ruin the family name. Naomi stood in front of that greenhouse like it was a church. She stepped inside, air heavy with earth and glass, rows of broken pots, dried vines. But the floor, something about the floorboards didn't sit right. She knelt, tapped. One, hollow. She pried it up with her bare hands. Inside, a tin box. And inside that box, history. A marriage certificate. Jonathan Sinclair and Denise Harris, signed in secret. Letters between them. Pages full of love, plans, promises. A second will, unaltered, signed by a different lawyer than Eleanor's. But the last item made Naomi's hands shake. A journal, her father's. The first page read, "If Naomi ever finds this, then the lies outlived me. But the truth is still hers." Tears slipped down her cheeks, soft and slow. She read for hours. He wrote about being disowned when he refused to leave Naomi's mother, about how Eleanor paid off lawyers to bury the marriage, how Daniel was raised, never knowing the full truth, how Jonathan tried, God, he tried, to return, to fight, to give Naomi what was hers. But they threatened him, said if he came back to New York, they'd claim he was unstable. So he built this land up for her, planted peach trees in her name, set aside funds in a southern bank account she never knew existed. She was never supposed to beg for a place. She already had one. As the sun dipped low behind the trees, Naomi stood in the greenhouse, surrounded by soil, sweat, and inheritance. And she whispered, "I'm home, Daddy." But peace don't come easy, because someone had followed her. Tires rolled up slow on gravel, a sleek black car, and out stepped Eleanor, in heels and linen, like the heat couldn't touch her. She walked up to the greenhouse, didn't blink. "I warned you," she said. "Some doors shouldn't be opened." Naomi faced her. "I opened the door, and found roots." Eleanor looked at the journal in her hands. Her face didn't crack, but her voice did. "That land was never supposed to be yours." Naomi stepped closer. "That's the thing about soil. It remembers who bled for it. And my daddy, he bled." Eleanor looked away, just for a second, then said, "You're not going to destroy us." Naomi's voice was calm. "I don't have to destroy anything. The truth will do it for me." She turned back to the box, but Eleanor reached out, grabbed the journal, tried to pull it. Naomi held tight, and for a moment, they stood there, two women, one legacy, tugging at the same truth. Then, the journal slipped, fell to the floor, pages scattered, and there, caught in the wind, was a photo of Naomi's mother holding baby Naomi on this very land. Eleanor picked it up, and for a moment, something in her face cracked, something almost like regret. But then, her mouth tightened, and she said the words Naomi would never forget. "You may have his name, but you'll never have mine." Then she turned and walked away. But Naomi, she smiled, because she didn't want Eleanor's name. She was building her own. And back in New York, a courtroom waited, because now she had every weapon she needed. And this time, Naomi wasn't knocking. She was walking through the front door, papers in hand. The courtroom was cold, not in temperature, in spirit. Marble walls, polished wood, white faces staring down from the judge's bench like statues from another century. But Naomi stood tall, dark skin glowing under courthouse fluorescence, hair pulled back into a bun slicked with purpose, and in her eyes, fire and focus. To her left, her attorney, a black woman named Layla Brooks, sharp as a blade, voice smoother than honey but laced with steel. Across the aisle, Eleanor, pearls tight on her throat like a chain. Daniel beside her, not holding her hand, but not letting go either. The judge cleared his throat. "Case number 44BX127, Naomi Delilah Harris Sinclair versus the Sinclair Family Trust." Layla rose. "Your Honor, we are here to prove that not only was Naomi Sinclair's rightful inheritance suppressed, but that an entire legacy, land, history, and bloodline was hidden, manipulated, and nearly erased by her husband's family." She turned, slow, specifically by Eleanor Sinclair, under the guise of elegance and behind the shield of wealth. Eleanor's lawyer objected. "Your Honor, this is inflammatory." The judge waved it off. "Let her finish." Layla continued. "We have documented proof, a will signed and witnessed in Georgia, a journal from Jonathan Sinclair himself, a video testimony from Naomi's late mother, and a suppressed marriage certificate from 1994, making Naomi not only the lawful heir to Sinclair Grove, but a rightful stakeholder in the family trust Daniel Sinclair inherited." The judge turned to Eleanor's side. "Is this true, Mrs. Sinclair?" Eleanor stood, perfect posture, crocodile composure. "There was confusion," she said. "My brother made emotional decisions. He abandoned the family. He left no proper trail." Layla interrupted. "Yet you locked away his portrait, his land, his letters, and you burned a will. We call that fraud, Your Honor." The courtroom stirred. Daniel shifted in his seat. Naomi said nothing. She didn't need to, because sometimes silence is a louder answer than words. Then Layla called Naomi to the stand. She walked slow, sat straight, laid her hands on her lap like her mama taught her in church, and when she opened her mouth, the room went still. "I married a man I loved. I entered a house that never loved me back. They called me a gold digger, but the only thing I was digging for was truth. I never asked for riches, just respect. And when they took that from me, when they buried my father's name beneath lies and legal tricks, I didn't cry. I remembered who raised me. A woman who told me, dignity don't come from money. It comes from standing up even when your knees shake. She turned to Eleanor. I'm not asking for your approval. I'm demanding my place. Her voice didn't break. It bloomed. The judge leaned back, and then he said the words that turned the air electric. Based on the documents presented and the confirmed identity of Naomi Delilah Harris Sinclair as the legal daughter of Jonathan H. Sinclair, the court recognizes her claim. The estate must amend the trust, and room 1914 shall be preserved by law as part of the Sinclair Historic Legacy Site. Eleanor gasped. Daniel dropped his head. Naomi? She closed her eyes and exhaled. Not relief, victory. But as she stepped off that stand, a hand brushed her arm. Daniel, his voice low. I'm sorry. Naomi looked at him, really looked, and said, You loved me, but not enough to fight beside me. Then she walked away. No drama, no slap, just a woman reclaiming her name. But outside the courthouse, someone waited. A journalist, young, black, full of light. She raised her mic. Mrs. Sinclair, do you have a comment? Naomi smiled, slow. Yes. She looked into the camera and said, They said I was too dark to belong, but now, my name is written in gold. And not because I married it, because I earned it. But baby, the story ain't quite done. Because 3 nights later, a letter arrived at Naomi's new brownstone. No return address. Just 3 words written on the front. Don't trust him. Inside, a photo. Daniel, holding a baby, and Sierra, standing beside him. Naomi sat still on her sofa. The letter lay open in her lap. That photo staring up at her like a question she didn't ask. Daniel, holding a baby. Not a newborn. No, this child was already a few months old. Curly hair, warm brown skin. But what struck Naomi like a fist to the chest was the eyes, big, wide, hers. Naomi's hand trembled. She looked closer. That baby didn't just resemble her. That baby could have been her daughter. And in that moment, Naomi understood what betrayal really looked like. It wasn't just Daniel's affair. It was the bloodline. That child was hers too. Not by birth, but by connection. Naomi picked up her phone, called Sierra. No hello, just one question. Is that child Daniel's? Silence. Then Sierra whispered, Yes. Naomi's voice cracked. And is she mine? Sierra didn't speak right away. Then, she's dark like you. And that was all it took. Naomi felt her whole chest tighten, not with hate, not with jealousy, but with something deeper, something that came from the bones of women who've been erased for centuries. Responsibility. That child would grow up branded with the same label Naomi had spent her life shaking off. Too dark, too black, too much, and worse, a secret. Another shadow in a whitewashed legacy. Naomi stood, grabbed her coat, headed to the only place that made sense. Sierra lived in Harlem. 3rd floor walk-up. When she opened the door, Naomi stood there. Calm, Sierra clutched the baby to her chest, instinctively. Naomi looked down, and for the first time, the baby looked back. No fear, just those same eyes, wide, curious, and ancient. Naomi whispered, What's her name? Sierra blinked, then said, Imani. Naomi's heart broke, because that was the name she and Daniel had chosen. Long ago, for a baby they never had. Naomi stepped forward. I want to see her, not to punish you, not to judge, but because she deserves to know she ain't born from shame. Sierra's lip trembled. Daniel wanted to hide her. Naomi nodded. Of course he did. He's been trained to hide the parts of his life that look like me. Sierra let her in. Naomi sat on the floor. Imani crawled into her lap like she'd been there before, and Naomi held her, not like a stepmother, but like a mirror. She kissed Imani's curls and whispered, You are not a mistake. You are a seed. And I swear on my mother's name, you will grow in sunlight. Sierra wiped her eyes. You still wear your crown, even after everything. Naomi smiled, soft but sharp. That's the thing about black women, baby. We don't wear crowns for the world to see. We wear 'em in the dark, where no one can snatch them off. But just as Naomi stood to leave, Sierra handed her a USB drive. What's this? Sierra looked her in the eye. Daniel recorded everything. The affair, the will, even a voice memo the night Eleanor told him to cut you out. Naomi's breath caught. He recorded it? Sierra nodded. He kept receipts. Just in case. He knew Eleanor could turn on him too. Naomi took the drive. And right then, she knew. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about legacy. Imani would never grow up in shadows. And Eleanor? She was about to hear her own voice in court, condemning herself. But before Naomi left, Sierra touched her arm. "Thank you," she said, "for not burning me down." Naomi smiled. "I'm not here to burn you, baby. I'm here to burn the lie." She walked into the Harlem night, drive in hand. But the storm wasn't done yet, because the next morning, Naomi received a call from Eleanor's lawyer, and he said 3 words she never expected. "She's stepping down." But what he said next, "She left something for you in room 1914. Naomi hadn't stepped foot in the mansion since the verdict. She'd let the lawyers, the courts, the news cameras circle it like vultures. Let them have the marble, the chandeliers, the paintings. But room 1914? That was sacred ground. She walked in alone. No earrings, no makeup, just a sweatshirt, jeans, and the quiet knowing of a woman who'd survived the fire. The portrait of her father still hung above the fireplace, untouched. The dust in the room hadn't moved. Except for one thing, a sealed envelope, resting on the arm of the leather chair beneath the window. It was thick, heavy. Naomi picked it up, her name written in ink. Naomi Delilah Harris Sinclair. The handwriting was Eleanor's. Her stomach tightened. She sat down, took a breath, opened it. Inside, a single letter and a small box. She unfolded the page and read, "Naomi, I hated you before I knew you, and for that, I am not sorry. I was raised to believe that skin meant lineage, that bloodlines had rules. You broke every one of them just by existing. But I watched you walk through this house with dignity. I watched you take every insult and wear it like armor, and I saw something I never saw in myself, a woman who cannot be erased. Your father loved you. Desperately. That's what made me fear you, because you reminded me of what I gave up to be accepted. Power for me was performance. For you, it's truth. The box holds my grandmother's brooch. She was the last woman in this family darker than ivory. They buried her picture. I kept her jewel. I always meant to give it to my granddaughter. Now I do. Not because I forgive you, but because you're the only one strong enough to carry it. Eleanor." Naomi didn't cry. She sat still for a long time, then opened the box. Inside, a brooch shaped like a magnolia flower, black pearl in the center, edges worn by time. She held it in her palm. The weight was more than metal. It was history. Stolen, hidden, returned. Naomi whispered, "I'll wear it to Imani's first birthday. Because legacies aren't just about names, baby. They're about choices." And Naomi had made hers. That night she stood at the fireplace, laid the letter beside her father's portrait, lit a match, burned the lies, just the lies. And the next morning, the Sinclair family name appeared in the Times under a new listing. Naomi D.H. Sinclair, Executive Director of the Sinclair Harris Foundation for Black Women's Legacy and Land Ownership. But one page in that paper held something else, a full-color photo of Naomi, standing at the mansion gates, with baby Imani on her hip. No husband, no apology, just a woman and the child she chose to lift. But there's still one more thing, sugar, because a knock came at Naomi's door that night. Not Daniel, not Sierra, but a woman in a gray coat. She handed Naomi a manila envelope and said, "It's time you knew who really mailed that first letter. The one that said, 'Don't trust him.'" Naomi opened it. Inside, a passport, a plane ticket, and a birth certificate, with her mother's name listed under place of birth as Birmingham, England. Naomi froze, because her mama never said she was born overseas, and stamped across the top of that certificate was a name Naomi had never heard before. Geneva Sinclair. Naomi sat on that flight to London like a woman carrying more than luggage. She carried names, her mother's, her father's, the ones spoken in shame, the ones erased in ink, the ones whispered in secret and sealed in envelopes. She kept her hand over the passport the whole way. The name printed in bold, Geneva Sinclair, born 1943, Birmingham, England. The woman Naomi had called Mama her whole life, Denise Harris, had never mentioned Birmingham, never mentioned England. But that birth certificate said her mother had another name before Denise, before America. And Naomi knew, if you change your name, it's not always to escape shame. Sometimes it's to escape danger. In London, the sky hung low and grey. The air was damp, old. Naomi wore a wool coat, her curls tucked under a satin scarf. She walked through South London streets with purpose. Straight to the address from the envelope, 27 Langley Crescent. A narrow red brick flat. She knocked. A pause. Then, the door creaked open. An older black woman stood behind it. Dark skin, silver hair wrapped in indigo cloth, eyes that pierced right through. She studied Naomi, then whispered, "Lord, she looked just like Geneva." Naomi blinked. "I'm Naomi, Geneva's daughter. Denise was her name in the States." The woman opened the door wider. "Come in, child. Your mama and I? We were cousins, raised like sisters." She left and never looked back. Naomi stepped into a room filled with incense, worn furniture and photographs. One caught her eye. Her mother, younger, braids down her back. Beside her, a tall British man, light-skinned, sharp features, holding her like she was the rarest gem on earth. Naomi pointed. "Who's he?" The woman sighed. "The first Sinclair. Your mother loved him like breath, but his family didn't approve. Said she was too dark for the Sinclair name." Naomi's knees went weak. "They sent her away. Paid for silence. She fled to America. Took her maiden name. Rebuilt herself." Naomi whispered, "So Geneva is my mother's real name." The woman nodded. "She became Denise Harris to survive. But Geneva Sinclair, that was who she was before the world told her she didn't belong." Naomi sat, eyes full, mind racing. She suddenly understood. Her mother didn't just leave the past behind. She buried it, because being a dark-skinned black woman with a British son inside her and a rich family trying to erase her, that wasn't just painful, it was deadly. But Naomi had one more question. "Why send me the letter? The photo of Daniel and the baby?" The woman smiled, soft but firm. "Because truth needs a witness. I saw what they did to Geneva. I wasn't going to let them do it to you, too." Naomi stood, her voice clear. "Thank you. You saved me." "No, baby," the woman said. "You are the saving. You're the one Geneva dreamed about when she was running with tears down her throat, and no one to call." Naomi held the photo tight, and later that night, walking past Big Ben and the Thames, she whispered, "I am Geneva's daughter. I am Denise's voice. I am every woman they tried to silence, and now I speak." But the story ain't quite done, because when Naomi flew back to New York, waiting on her doorstep was a package inside, a set of keys, and a deed, signed by Eleanor 3 days before her death, to the Sinclair mansion, with a note, "Now it's yours. Make it look like us." And tucked inside the envelope was one last photo of Naomi, Imani, and Geneva, drawn in pencil like a prophecy, unsigned. But the handwriting on the back? It was Daniel's. It took a year. One long, beautiful, back-breaking year. But Naomi rebuilt the Sinclair mansion, not with architects, but with memory. She didn't tear it down. She restored it, stripped off the silence, peeled back the paint, let the house finally breathe in color. The first thing to go, that long hallway of ancestors, pale faces in gold frames, not a drop of melanin between them. Naomi replaced them with portraits of women. Her mother, Geneva, standing in a London alley, eyes full of fire. Her grandmother, wrapped in Sunday whites, holding baby Naomi on the porch in Atlanta. Imani, asleep in Naomi's arms, wearing a gold onesie with the word "Legacy" embroidered across the chest. She named the front parlor after her father. The Jonathan room, filled it with his journals, his paintings, his love letters, framed and lit like gospel. And that greenhouse, she turned it into a learning center. The Harris Garden, free classes for black girls from Brooklyn to the Bronx. Writing, land ownership, black history, she told each little girl who entered. "They said I didn't belong in this house. Now I teach from it." But the most sacred change, above the fireplace, Where once hung a cold oil painting of an 18th century Sinclair, now hung a new portrait. Naomi, dark skin radiant, hair natural and proud, Imani in her lap, hand on Naomi's chest, and behind them, painted softly, like a memory, Geneva, standing tall, one hand on Naomi's shoulder, eyes closed, smiling. The caption beneath the frame read, Blood, Root, Bloom. One evening, Naomi hosted a small gathering. No gala, no press, just soft music, warm lights, and black joy spilling across marble floors that once echoed with quiet judgment. Sierra came holding Imani's hand. Aunt Vi came down from Atlanta, holding sweet tea in a mason jar. Even Daniel came. He stood by the doorway, watching Naomi laugh with a young girl in cornrows and sneakers. He approached slowly. Naomi, she turned. Calm, whole. Daniel. He smiled. Small. You did it. Naomi didn't blink. I was always going to. He handed her an envelope. Inside, his formal resignation from the Sinclair Trust, his shares transferred. To Imani. She deserves to grow up with it in her name, he said. Naomi nodded. You finally told the truth. He looked down. I just wish I'd done it sooner. Naomi didn't respond. She didn't need to, because sometimes silence is the answer. She walked away, found Imani dancing in her socks, spinning under the chandelier. Naomi scooped her up and whispered, They said we didn't belong. But baby, look around. Outside, snow began to fall, soft, slow, dusting the columns, the gate, the new bronze plaque at the entrance, the Sinclair Harris home, for Black women's legacy, built on dignity, restored by truth. And back inside? Naomi stood in the Jonathan room, looking at her father's journal one last time. She closed it gently, then turned to the camera that had followed her all these chapters and said, If this story touched your heart like it touched mine, leave a word below. Aunt Grace is always here, baby, with stories for souls that been through the fire and came out shining. The end.